It's October, and that means it's time for this year's Halloween build. Well, hey guys, and welcome back to another Illustrator Modeler. The last couple years now, I've done a project in the month of October with the theme of Halloween in mind. The first was the Invisible Man that you see here. The second was this Batman Joker diorama I did last year. And this year, I'd like to stick with the Batman universe and work on my first full-size 3D printed figure, and this is of Mr. Freeze from the Batman universe. Now, I grew up watching Batman and have really come to love the character. I watched the 1960s reruns as a kid growing up, and then moved on to the Tim Burton movies, and I watched all the other films, good or bad, that were released after that. But one project I really enjoyed was the Batman animated series that was released in the late 90s. And it really got me to learn more about the Batman universe, and one character I really liked out of that show was Mr. Freeze. So this is a sculpt that I got off of cgtrader.com, and before we get started, let's take a closer look at the sculpt. Now again, the sculpt can be found on CG Trader for about $10 and was designed by Expecto. The figure is not a replica of the one seen on the animated show, but I really do like the design of the suit, features, and detailing. Expecto has a couple of other sculpts available, like this one of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and another based on Lord of the Rings. Now, one thing I do want to clarify here is that these files are meant strictly for the user. They're not meant to be sold off as model kits that are unpainted and unassembled. Alright, let's take a minute to review the individual pieces. Now, what you see here is a mix of both translucent and gray resin. The reason that's the case is because my original intention was to produce the model in gray resin and just paint it with printing the dome in translucent resin. However, when you start looking at this, you can see there's a potential for lighting here, and my friend Omar Baez did exactly that, and it turned out great. So I decided to go back and reprint some of the pieces, and so that's what you see here. So beginning with the head sculpt, I have it both printed in gray and this translucent. The gray is showing you more of the facial features and detailing. And for the goggles, I'm going to go ahead and light those up with a red SMD. There's a hole already drilled into the translucent piece here. And the lenses are masked off with liquid mask, of course. Once everything is painted, I'll remove the liquid mask and apply some clear Tamiya red to enhance the effect. Alright, next is the torso, which I'll show you more of this detailing here in a second, but the dome here is masked off, as well as the one on the back, and the idea is to place a blue SMD from within to allow those to glow blue. There is also a dome on his belt, and this, of course, is the leg piece, which one is bent and one is extended. And I have it drilled through already and hollowed out so that we'll be able to feed the wiring down through this boot, which I did not print this hollow initially. As I said, I was going to just not do any lighting, but I was able to drill the hole straight through, so this is where the wires are going to come out of in order to get to the display and the power source. And here's the other boot, and you can see the detailing is really nice. And then we've got his upper arm pieces here. And here, of course, is the gun, which is held by his right hand. And the plan is to light this up with a blue SMD, leaving these windows along the upper side here open, as well as the bottom. And the wire is going to actually not feed through his hand, but rather through the back side of the gun. And I'm going to cover the wire with a tubing that's going to feed it to his suit. And what I'm going to try to do is to match the look of the tubing to the pipes that you see along the sides of his suit here that are segmented in this way. So I have an idea for that, which Ken Spriggs, by the way, gave me an idea for this. We'll go into that as we get to that part of the build. And then we've got the other hand, which has a dome that mounts on top of it. And I'm going to play around with this a little bit here and see if it'll be possible to light this up. I have a hole placed into the hand, so we might be able to use an SMD to light this up. This, of course, is a snow globe that Mr. Freeze is fond of holding, in which it has a little figurine that is representative of his wife. Next, let me take a second to go over the paint scheme I planned for this. As you can see now, there are two prints of the torso. The reason that's the case is because the first print that I ran had a lot of damage along the backside that at first I thought would be okay, but the more I looked at it, I was not very pleased with that. So I decided to run it a second time, and I have learned a lot more about how to place supports to minimize damage, and the second one came out much better. Having two prints like this, however, gave me the chance to have a piece to test some stuff on, and what I've done here is I painted in the paint scheme that I plan to use here. So it's going to be a blue and black paint scheme, and what I've decided on is using this Vallejo from their Mecha color line, this metallic blue, and I'm going to weather that with some silver, and as for the piping around him, that's going to be done with a combination of black and gunmetal, and his bodysuit will be black. Now, as for this padding that you see here on his upper arms, it's also found on his thighs and boots. I'm going to paint them a light blue color because they remind me of the details that you see here from the animated show that are blue in color. And as for the gloves, I know it looks a little odd here colored purple, but that is the color they used on the animated series, and I think I'm going to keep in line with that color scheme and go with this here. This was done with combining white with the Vallejo purple that I have. Now, regarding the display base, the file does come with a beautiful sculpted display base you can put the figure on. However, what I'd like to include with this build is a sound card, much like I did with the Nomad build. And the sound card's going to include some quotes from Batman the Animated Series of Mr. Freeze. And so I found this at Hobby Lobby. It's hollow on the inside, so there's definitely enough room to put a sound card and to put some momentary switches along the side here that will activate the sound. And to help detail our base, I went on Thingiverse and happened to find some ice crystals that you can print out, and I'm going to be using these to help detail our base. So the plan is to create a snow terrain with these ice crystals in place. So that's what I have planned. I've been looking forward to this build for some time. Let's go ahead and get started. Well, before moving on, I want to let you know I've had a change of heart with regard to the paint I'm going to be using for the armor. I went back and started viewing some of the episodes with Mr. Freeze from the animated show just to get some of the sound bites for the sound card. And as much as I like the metallic blue, I'm going to go ahead and lighten it up so I can make it more of an homage to the animated series version. So I've been playing around with this piece here and took some metallic blue and lightened it up with silver, and I think that's the way I'm going to go. And the other thing I'm a little undecided about, however, is also the gun. I was playing around with an LED, placing it inside here, and not really getting a lot of light up here, enough to go through the effort of lighting this, so I think I may not do that. Alright, so I know I have a couple things to decide on there. However, I'm going to go ahead and move on first with applying the paint to our armor. Okay, so this is how it turned out, and again, on the TV show, he has this body armor that's fairly simple, and it's painted a light gray color, which I'm sure they're implying it's supposed to be metallic silver. I didn't want to completely go away from the blue. I really do like the blue color, and when you lighten it up this way, it looks icy and cold, which I think goes well with our piece. But I think I can go a little step further. I'm going to do the same technique I did with the Predator ship, and that is to apply a lighter shade at these high points along these plates and the backside, so it can accentuate the way light is bouncing off and provide some variability in the shading. And I think that'll give a little more dimension to our piece here. So I experimented a little bit with our test piece here. This, of course, is a darker version of the metallic blue, but I took some silver and did that technique here by applying the paint along the peaks and the high points, and I think it's going to work out really well. This is the airbrush I used for this technique, and this is the Renegade by Badger, and the one thing this has that the Patriot does not, the Patriot 105, which is the airbrush I typically use for most things, is it has this little regulator, and by turning this regulator you can affect the way the paint is being sprayed out here. It also has a gauge here at the back that allows you to replicate the amount of spray from one spray session to the next, and you just have to take note of what this gauge is telling you there. So I'm going to go ahead and prep the paint and lighten it up, and then we're going to head back to our spray booth. So again, this technique is done by taking that airbrush and spraying on very light applications of our highlight color. And I keep doing this till I'm satisfied. Again, what I'm looking for is just enough contrast so that we can enhance the light bouncing off of these areas, but we obviously don't want it to look overdone. Alright, so just showing it against this gray background here, so hopefully you can see the effect, but it does add a lot to the piece here, I think. It really accentuates the reflection off the surface just like I wanted. So that's looking great. I, as you saw, applied it to the shoulder pads as well, keeping the spray around here and spreading it down this way across the shoulder pad there, and also highlighting a few places on his belt. Okay, well, it's time to move on to painting his bodysuit, and at first I thought I'd go with flat black, but changed to a mix of Vallejo game color Somber gray mixed with black to lighten it up a bit. Now for the highlights, I use a mix of Vallejo's Somber Gray and MSP's Dark Elf Shadow, which is kind of a dark purplish color. And for the deeper shadows, I just painted in the Dark Elf Shadow Unmixed. Next were the installation pads, which I decided to paint with Game Color's Magic Blue. Now what I love about this sculpt is that all the details are really nice. They're very easy to paint and to follow along the edges so that you can get nice straight paint lines. And to bring out more of the surface details, I mixed up a wash using Vallejo's Dark Prussian Blue, and this was mixed with water and a drop of dishwashing liquid to promote flow. The highlights were done by dry brushing on Vallejo's Light Sea Blue. Okay guys, here we now have the finished pieces, and I'm very pleased with the way the colors turned out, including that wash at the end. Now, the printer is on in the background, and what I've got going on there is one final attempt at printing the helmet. I just want to see if I can get a cleaner print of that, so we'll see how that turns out in a couple hours. Okay guys, well I'm going to go ahead and end part 1 here. I'll pick up in the next video where I'll complete the build and the display and do a final reveal for you. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me here on my YouTube channel or at illustratormodeler@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll make sure I post the second part in time for Halloween at the end of the week. Take care.